96.7 Be the Hood Rich Radio is the voice of DJ Scream and Rand is here. We have a very, very, very special guest in the building. Cyntoia Brown is at Hood Rich Radio.
Oh, my God.
I can't believe it.
Yes.
Thank you, Kodak. I can't believe it. Welcome to Hood Rich Radio. How are you?
I'm good. And it's Cyntoia Brown Long. I'm married now.
Hey, congratulations.
Cyntoia Brown Long.
Long way.
Be clear. Welcome to Atlanta. How's Atlanta treating you?
Good so far.
Good so far? Okay. Tell us some of the things that you've been up to, kind of hip everybody to some of the things that you've had going on recently.
So just been going around speaking about my book, Free Cyntoia, My Search for Redemption in the American Prison System, and also just speaking in general about some of the experiences leading up to my incarceration, being trafficked, being incarcerated at the age of 16 and told that I would spend the rest of my life in prison.
And dating back to that story, just so people will be clear and understand, the whole situation, basically you defended yourself.
Right.
And you were wrongfully accused and incarcerated and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that experience and how it affected you.
It was really difficult, going through the court system, and no one seemed to listen. No one seemed to care about my perspective. I felt that I was defending myself, and this was a man who had picked me up from sex. He was 43 years old, and I was just 16. And no one seemed to care about any of that. No one seemed to hear me out. So it was really difficult. And then when I was told that I would spend the rest of my life in prison, that basically I was just going to be thrown away instead of being helped in the juvenile system, instead of being given a reasonable sentence for what had happened. It was devastating, but I never really accepted that I'd spend the rest of my life in prison.
When did you see a glimmer of hope, and when did you first hear from someone that says, hey, I'm going to help you get out of this situation?
So the first glimmer of hope actually happened after all of my appeals had been denied. And it really looked like there was a big possibility that I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison because I didn't have any other avenues to get relief. The only chance that I had was through clemency. And in the state of Tennessee, less than 1% of applicants are even considered by the parole board for clemency. And around that time, I had got a letter from my now husband. And he told me the Lord spoke to him and said to write me and let me know that I was going to get out of prison. And at the time, it didn't look like it. And we started talking more, and he started just helping me in my faith. I had come to just become really angry with God. And I knew what religion was, but I didn't know what it meant to have a relationship with Jesus. And when I started focusing on him and really believing that he could turn things around, I saw how he started touching people to support me, touching organizations, victims' rights organizations that had never supported people going up before the parole board. They were supporting me. They were speaking up for me. I had people from all walks of life who were coming together to write me, to pray for me. And it was just amazing to see how he was touching so many people. And I saw that he was doing something. I didn't know how it would look. I didn't know how relief would come, but I knew that he was going to get me out.
That's real. So you spoke on redemption, and most people would say that you were defending yourself. So why do you feel like you need to be redeemed for what you did?
I think that if we look at that one moment, what happened between me and that individual, I think that you can say, well, yeah, this was the situation, but I look at everything in totality. I look at what happened with his family. They had absolutely nothing to do with anything, and these are individuals who are still to this day grieving. I look at all the choices, that I made to run away from home and how that affected my family. Everything is what I look at, and I was in a place where, I was harboring a lot of shame, a lot of guilt for the decisions that I did make. And I could come back from that just like anybody else can. And God brought me from a place of that. All the trauma that I had carried around, like he brought me from that. He healed me from that. Right. And so redemption is, it's having new life after that. Life was not over.
That's real. Did you have any type of survivor's guilt seeing how you did survive everything?
I don't experience survivor's guilt. I do feel that, I'll feel free when everyone else can have freedom. Right. I'll feel free when there are avenues for other people to receive the same compassion that I did, to receive the same consideration that I did when their voices can be heard as well, because I think it's only right. And I just feel blessed and I feel honored to to be put in a position to give voice to that and to put a face to it, because these are people. These are not just case numbers. These are not just, the worst thing that they've done. These are people. These are mothers. These are daughters. These are fathers and brothers.
Right.
And I don't feel guilt. I just feel, blessed that I can represent them.
That's what's saying.
No doubt. So your first day out, now you're a free woman. You're back out in the world. Tell us the first thing you did and tell us some things that you did to follow that.
The first thing I did was ate a can of ravioli.
Okay.
Wow.
I
Okay.
would have personally chose a different meal, but if ravioli is what does it for you, we're happy.
Yeah, my husband didn't understand either. He was like, you can eat anything you want.
Right, fried
like,
chicken,
anything.
fish,
and that's what
lobster.
you choose. That's
right.
what I wanted.
Okay.
So I sat on my kitchen counter and ate a can of ravioli. And yeah, just really hung out around the house. Like, you often hear people like, oh, when I get out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I would always say, man, when I get out, I just want to sit on the couch.
The
I just
basic
wanna
things.
chill.
Stuff. Yeah. What was life like before you went in? Like, what year were you? What year was it when you were 16? Like, what was going on in the world?
So when I was
I'm gonna
16
make it a
and
little
I
more
went in,
detail too. What was the popping song?
Yeah.
Who was the popping artist then? And then when you came out, how did music change as well?
Lil Wayne's The Carter had just came out.
The Carter
and
one?
everybody was
Oh wow.
and everybody was listening to the album Lil Boosie and Lil Webby. They had
Yeah.
that album. Everybody was
Savage.
listening to that.
Sounds like
And the video phones. Beyonce had her song Video Phone.
Right.
Like, they had just started making videos with phones. They were flip phones. So,
And now you come out and people can literally talk
Yeah.
via FaceTime on the phone.
right.
Yeah, crazy.
Right. And everything, just little mini computers in your hand.
was it hard for you to just adjust to this new world that you were stepping into?
No, it was easy. Like, my husband will tell you, within days, I was figuring out, okay, babe, I got the printers hooked up to our phones and you could just print from here. And he's like, what? Like, yeah, I figured this out. I got this app. And so I just picked it up really quick. I'm kind of nosy. And so, like, I like figuring stuff out.
Word.
So it was pretty easy.
Cool.
What about Instagram? What was your thoughts on Instagram when you got out of you got on Instagram? It was like, wow,
Cause you was popping on the ground. Seriously, that's how
Really?
most of us heard of you, of the whole
that's how the
situation.
story spread.
Word.
Everybody was aware.
Well, I'm just now learning about Instagram. My husband, he doesn't really deal with it. So I do his page. I post up on his page, my page.
Get that blue check now. That's
Yeah,
big.
you popping, girl. You out here.
A lot of people don't
Drop a
have that blue
mixtape.
check.
No, I was just playing.
Yeah, I won't be doing that.
Word.
But yeah, it's something. I think it's interesting. Like, I think there's good things about social media, but I think there's also very negative things. I think a lot of times when we look at what actually contributes to young girls being vulnerable to being exploited, and it stems from wanting to be accepted and being in a place where they're trying to find somewhere where they belong. At least that was my experience, and I don't know how healthy it is, the things that people are willing to do, for likes and for people to follow them. And I'm not blaming these individuals, these young ladies, but it's the culture that encourages this and says this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but I think it's also helpful, like, when it comes time to discuss important things and to get information out about people that wouldn't have a voice ordinarily in situations that wouldn't be discussed.
That's real. What were your life aspirations when you were a kid? Like, what did you want to do before all this craziness happened?
I wanted to do something different every other week. I remember at one time I wanted to be an architect. Then I wanted to be an engineer, just because I heard like those were good jobs. But it was always something different. So
Typical child.
yeah.
That's real.
What do you listen to now?
Now I listen to Pandora. I like to listen to the Avant
artists?
station and
Artists,
Fred Hammond
artists.
station.
Artists.
Just different ones.
Different
I don't know.
ones.
Yeah.
Who's your
Jacqueline Carr,
Okay.
Fred Hammond. I love Avant. I think Avant is very underrated. And of course J Long. I love my J Long.
Okay. And are you a fan of like any sports?
No.
No. That's what she said. No. A serious question. So there's a lot going on as it pertains to sex trafficking. You see the billboards everywhere, and then like people getting snatched, and they're trying to tell women how they can be cautious so they might not end up in that type of situation. What would you advise to women now that this has become a multi-billion-dollar industry for them to keep themselves safe and protected?
Ooh, I know that it's a very real thing. People getting snatched off this. I know that really happens. My experience is more with younger girls being, kind of manipulated into that. But, for women, protect yourself by all means. That means preventative measures. That means being with other people. That means knowing the situations that you're in. Just stay aware and by all means protect yourself. Know that you have that right.
And if you end up, let's say, in the situation, is there any advice you would say to someone, like if they're in the situation, if they're trapped, is there anything that they can do at that point?
Yes, you have options. I know a lot of times you get in situations and even though options may be present, you can't necessarily see them. You can't really see past the moment that you're in. And so you can feel trapped even though you're not. So know that you're not. Know that whatever situation you're in, there is a way out. And there are people who are willing to help you find a way out. I don't have the number with me right now. Perhaps you guys can look it up and air it. But there's a hotline for trafficking. I really think that hotels and places like that can do much more in terms of making that information available. But yeah, there's a way out, and you can thrive on the other side of this.
Are there any cases that you have your eyes on, like maybe people that were wrongfully incarcerated that you're trying to help with?
Oh, I mean, where do you start?
Where do you start? Okay.
Yeah, where do you start? I think that it's important for us to talk about, cases as they come up, but I think we need to look at these cases as examples, and I think we need to look at, okay, what are the laws that are in place right now that allowed for this to happen? What are the practices that are allowing this to happen? And we need to focus efforts on changing there. So it's great that me as an individual, that I'm sitting here free, but it's not over. There's
plenty more people.
Yeah, so there's not changes to the actual law. There's still people in Tennessee who are doing 51 years in prison. There's still young girls who, the situation that they find themselves in isn't being considered. I know there was a new case, I think it was in Philadelphia, of a young 14-year-old girl being charged with a man. Why was she alone with this older man? Like, we don't ask these questions, and it's not given much consideration in the justice system. So I think that we really need to look at what's behind these cases, what's behind these faces, and that's where we can focus our efforts.
Okay.
Have you been back to the prison since you've been out to visit or to?
Yeah, I'm not ready for all that.
Okay. All right.
I haven't.
Finally, we'd like to give words of motivation. So if there's a young lady out there that might just be going through it all, give them some motivation right now, some good game.
Just know that, so many times we feel that we can't make it past this moment. We don't know where our life is headed. Sometimes you may feel like it's over. I know I felt that way sometimes. But when I tell you God has a plan, even when we can't see it, He's working it out. When you don't even know. Like, we always look in hindsight and we're like, wow, like He had that plan just perfectly. He worked that out. And just look at what He's done for you before and know that He's going to do it again. Look at what He's done for others. Know that He'll do that for you too. The same way that He freed me from prison, the physical prisons of anger and shame and guilt and everything else, He can free you from everything that you're going through, and He will. He's faithful to do just that.
Very good game, very good game. And then finally, for forgiveness. I mean, if someone does whatever they do to you, do you believe in always finding the space to forgive that person? Of course, not forget, but just forgive them.
Absolutely. I think you forgive, 70 times 7. But I think it's important to know that, forgiveness is for yourself, number one. For me, I had to forgive a lot of the people who had done things for me. I'm still having to forgive people. And that's for me to move on in a healthy way. That's for me to say what happened before. I'm not going to take ownership of that, number one. Number two, I'm not going to allow it to run the rest of my life. I'm not going to continue to carry that with me. And also, forgiveness doesn't mean that you continue to allow people to harm you. So many times forgiveness comes in the form of people who are attached to you, family or otherwise. You don't have to continue to allow people to step over you just because you forgive them. And you don't need to be made to feel guilty because you cut off relationships with individuals. Forgiveness is very healthy, and it's very necessary.
Okay. Absolutely. We appreciate you coming through, Cyntoia Brown. Long.
Yes, sir. Hey, show your ring.
Radio.
Show your ring to the camera. There it is.
There you go.
There
Show
it is.
that ring. Give everybody your Instagram so they can follow you and get some positive vibes.
You can follow me at Cyntoia Brown Official.
For sure.
Cyntoia Brown Official. There it is. All right, it's 96.7 to be Hood Rich Radio. Salute.